All right. Hi, everybody. This is Brandon Friedman with Ongoing Operations. I've got Shane Butcher with me, and Shane will introduce himself just shortly. As we get going here, we're excited to have you. This is a great topic that we're going to be presenting. I know security is obviously something that's on everybody's mind, and with the pandemic, obviously, we've got a lot of people working remotely. We want to make sure that our people are secure and using our infrastructure securely as credit unions. One of the great ways to make sure that employees are accessing your data securely is through managed social engineering training, and that's what we're going to be discussing today. Without further ado, I appreciate everybody joining us. I'm going to hand this over to Shane. I do want to mention, if you have any questions at any time, please put them in the chat. We will have a question and answer at the end, but we can also stop if questions are relevant, and we can ask them while the presentation is going. So we'd like as much interaction as possible through the chat. And without further ado, Shane.
Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate the intro. So I'm Shane Butcher. I'm one of our virtual CISOs here, our Senior Solutions and Security Architect. So provide virtual CISO services and security consulting for a number of our clients here on the team. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So the problem. When we look at statistics, 91% of successful data breaches start with a spear phishing attack. And 30% of those breaches are caused by repeat offenders in the organization. So folks who continue to click on links that they shouldn't, engaging with those phishing attacks and going against all of what we're asking them to do from a security point of view. So the average cost of a ransomware attack is now $133,000, and over a third of the businesses hit with malware take a week or more to regain access to that data. So they're actually down and not able to work with their customer data or member data for credit unions for a week during these attacks. And over 3/4 of the companies that have been hit with a ransomware attack have had up-to-date endpoint protection, whether anti-malware, endpoint detection response software running on their devices, and it wasn't able to stop that infection. So technical controls alone are not enough. When we look at business email compromise and CO fraud, business email compromise being someone has actually gained credentials for our email system and is trying to commit fraud within our environment through falsifying wires or changing accounts where money's sent to, those types of attacks. That's increased 100% globally just between 2018 and 2019. And the interesting things about these attacks are that they contain no links, no attachments. Most of the time, it's generally trying to manipulate someone into taking an action that they shouldn't, and that goes against our policies. So as we look at it, what is social engineering? At its basic premise, social engineering is a psychological manipulation. So getting a person to do an action that we want through some sort of false pretexts or manipulation, or making them believe that we're someone that we're not. And social engineering can include, phishing, which is, emails that are getting us to perform an action, either click on a link, open a document, or take some action. Phishing, which is another word for voice phishing, where they're calling us up and trying to either gather information or make our employees go to a website and download a file that may infect the environment, or just run a command on their computer to give them some additional information as they work their way through trying to gather information. Smishing is SMS phishing, very similar type of thing, where they're sending you a text with either a link or pretending to be an exec in your company, asking you to take a particular action. It's becoming quite common. Whaling and spear phishing is a term for, when it's either directed or impersonating, an exec, specifically like a CEO, CFO, where the the target is big and the payouts could be big for compromising that. And as I mentioned earlier, it can take the form of business email compromise, where they have actually compromised our systems, which usually originates from a successful phishing attack somewhere else in the environment. Impersonation and pretexting is where the attacker will pretend to be someone else. So they've gathered other information, could be off of our website or through a call placed to another person in our environment, but they are trying to get one of our employees to take an action or give additional information by having some sort of information that makes them seem trusted, or that they are, someone who they're not, or that are part of our environment. And lastly is tailgating, which is a more physical one. So following someone into one of our secure areas, either just by kind of staying on the coattails, or even having that conversation where someone's not paying attention and allowing someone to get in without swiping into our secure areas. So here's one example of a phishing attempt. This one, again, not, is without links, without attachments, but again, trying to get someone to take an action. Generally, these guys are trying to get you to buy credit or gift cards and sending you pictures of them so that they can take the codes and run. But again, one example of where it's not, someone doesn't have a link or an attachment. Here's another example of one. These are becoming much more common. It looks just like a Microsoft email, and most of the times when you click on these, it's taking you to a page that resembles a Microsoft authentication page, and for the purpose of gathering your credentials so that they can then hijack your Microsoft account. And some recent attacks actually even gone so far as to take those credentials as you put them in and check to see if they're valid in Microsoft, and if not, tell you that the password's wrong so you can put the correct ones in. Those attackers are getting much more sophisticated in trying to gather the information from our employees. So how does this affect my credit union? We're looking at, once someone successfully executes a phishing attack, we could get ransomware where we're locked out of our data, and that data may or may not be exfiltrated, and folks are demanding money to unlock that data. Member information disclosure, that is one of the most common ones that we've got these days, both with ransomware and without. So someone has taken that data out and is either going to sell it on the dark web or use it to try to perpetrate fraud against our members. Fraud, obviously, both from trying to get our employees to take actions that they shouldn't, so that they can make a profit or get data out of, or get money out of our company or out of our credit unions, or again, impersonate a member and be able to perform fraud on their accounts. And lastly, reputation damage. We see it all the time in the news that folks are getting hacked, that data is being exfiltrated and posted to the dark web, and we have to notify our members, and that really is a big hit to our reputation, and in a lot of cases can be the largest expense when we're looking at ransomware disclosure and successful phishing attacks. So how is this getting into our environment? Obviously email. We know phishing is one of the primary attacks. Web pages, whether it's taken, or whether someone gets there from an email, or folks will a lot of times register domains that are very similar to one, so that if someone typos it, or links in common sites that they might go to, they may take us to web pages that have malicious content, or that have been hijacked and will download malicious content. USB, it's another common way, is someone will drop a USB in a parking lot or a break room or a lobby. We want to make sure that our folks are not plugging those USBs. And in person, again, they can manipulate their way into our environment, impersonating a technician or someone that's supposed to be in that in our buildings, and then once they are unescorted, have the ability to connect to our networks and potentially put malware inside our environments. So we want to prevent all these. So what can we do to protect our credit unions? First, we need to cover the basics. Good anti-malware and endpoint security software so that we're blocking as many of those malicious files as we can. We want to make sure that we've got email security, anti-phishing, functionality, anti-spoofing, as well as data loss prevention, so that if someone's trying to exfiltrate out through email, we're blocking that. We want to make sure that we have an intrusion detection system and/or an intrusion prevention system to block and notify when malicious activity is happening on our network. And we want to make sure that we have great policies and procedures. Do your employees know how your IT staff will engage, and do they know to never give a password on the phone? Do they know that our IT staff will never ask them to run a command and give them information? Rather, they'll engage directly on those machines so that they're not providing attackers with this information. Do they know how to verify identity? Do you have a policy around that? So when you're exchanging privileged information over the phone with another employee, what's your process for making sure you're talking to the correct person? Or if we're going via email and someone's trying to change a process, how do we validate that? Do we pick up the phone and call them? What's our process within our credit unions? And then making sure we know physical security procedures, not to let someone tailgate in behind you on the door, or that all of our vendors need to be escorted. So if if a Comcast or an internet service provider technician comes in, we don't leave them alone in the server rooms or our wiring closets, that we're escorting them. And then multi-factor authentication is one of the single best things that we can do to prevent business email compromise and allowing folks remotely to get into our networks. NCUA sent out a risk alert recommending multi-factor authentication as one of the best ways to help prevent business email compromise. We should use it on our email systems. We should use it on our VPN systems. In any method that folks use to access our systems remotely should have multi-factor authentication. And lastly, we want to make sure that we've got our email set up with the technologies that are going to help prevent spoofing and validation of the senders. Technologies like SPF, DKIM, and DMARC are all very important on the technical side to make sure that email and the folks that are emailing are who we think they are. So what else? Training. We want to ensure that training and security is part of our culture from day one, that our employees know that we take it seriously, that we're training constantly, and that it is part of our communications. And that makes them more aware of what's going on around them. It helps them to be skeptical. We want to train our employees to be skeptical so that they are questioning things that don't look right. And we want to make sure that we train our employees on all aspects of information security, including social engineering. And this is from day one and periodically throughout their employment with us. We also want to make sure that they know our individual physical and technical security policies. How do we check IDs? Who's allowed to escort someone around? Where do they have to sign in? Those sorts of things to make sure that we know who's in our environment, and also the technical how is our IT departments going to engage with them so that they're not giving information to the wrong people. And we want to make sure that we are performing that security training at least annually. For all of our CISO customers, I always recommend quarterly, again, so that that training is in front of people and that they know that it's important enough to us to do it quarterly. We also want to make sure that we're testing our employees specifically around phishing and social engineering. And ideally, we're going to be doing phishing tests monthly so that they're getting that constant check. And preferably, we want to use an outside party to administer. If we have our IT or our risk departments administering these tests, those folks are not getting trained. They're not may not be looking at those links and those attachments critically. And honestly, we administer phishing tests for a large number of customers. We do see the IT folks click on them from time to time. Nobody is impermeable from actually clicking on a link. So we want to make sure all of our employees are tested. We want to make sure that we're doing our remote social engineering, voice phishing tests, and on-site social engineering tests at least annually. Both, again, trying to prevent folks from giving information out over the phone, but also to make sure that our physical security procedures are being upheld and we're not allowing someone, access to the secure areas of our building to pick up documents or plug things into our network. And when we're doing those on-site and remote social engineering tests, we want to make sure that we're using firms with experienced penetration testers. It's definitely a skill to be able to socially engineer someone, and these guys do a lot of prep, background work, even getting shirts printed to look like the vendor that they're impersonating. So we want to make sure that we engage someone that is able to do that effectively and in depth for our organizations. So the solution, Jonathan, do you want to jump in here? I think we have Jonathan.
Yep, sure thing. Okay. Thank you, Shane. So yeah, next slide, please. So, all right. So we've talked through a lot of points already, right? We need a platform that's going to train our users and phish users, and more importantly, we want to see the results, right? So next slide, we're going to talk through that in a few details here. So as Shane mentioned earlier, we really want to train our employees to be skeptical. And that's because this is the most likely that your security walls are going to be penetrated is through your actual end users, clicking on these links, getting malware, things of that nature. So we look at the importance of testing, and people ask us why. I think the expectation often is quarterly. We emphasize this needs to be done monthly. And as we do this, we actually see huge improvements. So the credit unions where we've done this, you see end users who were ready to click on anything or had very kind of little spider senses for picking up on these suspicious things. You start training and testing your users. The improvement is dramatic here. See from before they see 87%. I think we see even higher than that in some cases. So next slide, please, Shane.
Yep.
All right. So the next few slides, I want to emphasize really that we manage the platform, which is really important, right? One, we keep credit unions on a cadence. This is a very important thing, but if you look at all of the security activities that have to happen on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, it's easy to deprioritize these tasks. So one of the biggest values we create here is actually we make sure this happens on a monthly basis. Second, making sure that we have some automation or a way of onboarding new users to make sure they receive the training. And another emphasis is, so a lot of credit unions do just annual training, which does, meet the requirements generally. We actually push for quarterly training of end users, and we see the more frequently you train, even if it's in smaller time intervals, right? Not necessarily the hour-long, snooze fest that people feel like they do, every December, every year, but hitting with meaningful, applicable training on a quarterly basis, I think has a huge impact. And then reporting, right? So even people who manage these tools usually don't leverage the full value of the reporting. We think that's really important for the appropriate folks to know how the end users are doing. It can highlight training issues. And an extra thing we do is actually we score credit unions against each other. So you can see not just how you do in the financial services industry, but actually how you compare to your peer credit unions. So that's very important element, this, and that when you're not so busy conducting the test and you're actually reviewing the report, it really puts you in a decision. It makes it a lot easier to address and make a decision how to address if there's a performance or a training issue with certain employees, and also gives you a percentage to strive for month over month. Another emphasis here is the remote worker training. We have really changed the landscape, and this type of training is more important now than it has ever been. The biggest difference is we went from having 10% of our workforce maybe having VPN or remote access to 60, 70, 80%, and a few things change in that. Obviously, you're exposed to the home network, but also accountability goes down to some degree, right? You don't have a bunch of coworkers around your cube, seeing what's on your monitor. So just training remote workers on the impacts of the decisions they make on their, while connected to the network, and how that could actually impact the security of the network is huge. And also just the training, right? If you click on something and being able to, hey, you clicked on this, we're going to give you some additional training, but we want to educate you as to why this happened and what you can do to address this in the future. That reactive training, in addition to the proactive training that's already occurring, is huge. So Shane, if you could take me on to the next slide, please. All right. So a few things here. One, as I mentioned earlier, we want to reduce the work for staff. So as I said, when you have a list of 100 things to get done every month, it's easy to deprioritize this type of work. So we want to take that burden away from you. Secondly, when you have someone conducting this at the credit union, whether it be from risk or technology, you're not actually effectively testing all of your entire credit union. And as we assume that everyone that works in technology never clicks on these things, they don't need the training. That is simply not true. So technologists fall for this stuff all the time, and it's important that we're testing all of the staff at the credit union on a monthly basis. So obviously, this is a compliance requirement, and it's important to have to be able to demonstrate the training that you're doing and be able to have reports and provide those to the NCUA examiners and other auditors. All right, so a few things as I spoke to a little bit earlier, right? We believe it's really important to, at a minimum, conduct annual training. As I stated, quarterly training is a preference, but at a minimum, annual training. One, it also, you're able to set a specific training curriculum for all new employees, and we make that very easy, right? When you're onboarding employees, sometimes this gets deprioritized. It is very important for this to be one of the first things that you do with your employees. You're giving access to the network. They need to understand what they're responsible for and what they need to be looking out for. And remote worker. So we've used this, it's highly applicable. You've got more employees working at home than you ever had. And it's important they really understand their responsibilities and the security landscape. The second, they touch that work laptop or log on to the network, what they're really open to and what they're responsible and how they're responsible to manage their behavior. And just to emphasize, right? So the remedial clicker training, that's a burden we really like to take away from the credit union. One, if an employee that clicks on a link too many times, we don't actually want them to be upset with HR or risk or technology. Let us be the villains, right? But it's important that they do this and that they actually perform the training, and employees do, right? And the remedial training, it makes them be a better end user. It makes them more skeptical, but also, it's when you think about it, after you go through that training a few times, you think about every email you read and what your responsibility is when you do that, whether to click on that link or not. So Shane will take it on to the next one.
So yeah, so again, with this partnership with KnowBe4 for both their phishing testing and training, both annual, quarterly, we manage the platform, and one of the benefit is that ongoing operations, we have that credit union focus and experience. We are a CUSO, we are owned by credit unions, and our growth and focus is entirely 100% on credit unions. So we meet with the NCUA, we help a number of our CISO customers through their examinations, and even get examined ourselves. So we have that experience with credit unions and what's important to you as a credit union. We rate your performance against the credit union industry. KnowBe4, the platform has great reporting against everyone at large, multiple industries, including the financial and even the banking industry. And then we are able to take that one step further with our partnership with them and rank you against other credit unions to see how you're performing within this smaller industry. And then lastly, you get to leverage the experience of the OGO CISO team. It's our CISO team that manages the platform. We administer all of the monthly tests and make sure that the training platform and programs are being executed per the credit union requirements and our recommendations. And when issues happen, you have that experience of engaging with the OGO CISO team, and we're able to provide some of that expertise that we're able to that we gather from all of the credit unions that we work with, and can apply it to your phishing and training platform and experience. So I think we're now at a question and answer time. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. And Brandon, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything here.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear any questions that you guys have while we have Shane and John here. They can answer for you. I did receive a direct message asking, is this a solution that OGO uses internally?
And yes, it is. We actually do monthly phishing testing for all of our employees and quarterly training through the KnowBe4 platform.
Yeah, and I think in general, we tend to want to use most of the solutions that we do sell to clients. The way of vetting it out, it's also, we like to, if we see it as a solution that's beneficial to us, we want to share it with our clients. And I know KnowBe4 has been something that we've seen have a great effect on our staff, their knowledge base from a security perspective. Thank you for that question. Another question that I was messaged is, so you guys mentioned that one of the benefits is kind of removing the IT staff and making them part of the overall test, so that they aren't left out of the test, as technologists can fall prey to some of these as well. Do you guys have a recommendation for who at the organization is should be responsible for receiving reports? If not, should it be the technologist still, or should it be somebody else at the organization who interacts with you guys when you get the results of the report?
So generally, we work with risk and or HR. A lot of times the technologists generally see the reports. They want to know who, because they may follow up with additional training or discussions with them. But a lot of times, risk and or HR are the folks that we'll work with on this aspect, so that they can, from the training point of view, right? HR and a lot of organizations is responsible for that. But from ensuring that the training is happening, and that who's the biggest risk to the organization, we'll work with the risk departments a lot.
Great, that's great. Thank you, Shane. Are there any other questions related to KnowBe4 phishing that we can answer for?
Let's see. I think I see a couple here in the questions area.
Okay,
yeah. So let's see. First one, how the KnowBe4 phishing platform has it progressed? It seems limited in the past. The information that we get, and yes, it has been a little limited. I tested with it a few months ago myself. There was a couple good profiles. It's still not quite there at this point for all of our customers. I recommend that for the phishing and the remote social engineering, that aspect of test, that you get a good penetration tester to do that, and generally you do that both with your on-site and your remote penetration testing from that. But yeah, it's not quite there. I know they're putting resources into it, but like anything that's not out there, I couldn't say when, and I wouldn't want to tell you that something's coming until I've actually seen it. Let's see, with stay-at-home orders in place, how would you accomplish the on-site penetration testing? So obviously, if your environment has your governor or local authorities have issued a stay-at-home order, that's, I think that on-site penetration testing is would have to be put on hold, so that you don't violate any laws. We've had some of our customers recently where the rules have been relaxed a little. Obviously, all sorts of regulations still going on, but they were able to actually accomplish their on-site penetration testing with the branches open. Obviously, please follow the local regulations and all safety protocols, wear masks, whatever's required in your area. But we actually have seen that start to pick up in the last probably 30 to 45 days. Are there any other questions?
While we give you all a few more minutes, if you have questions to type in, I did mention if you are interested in having a copy of this slide deck, please feel free to email me directly at bfriedman@ongoingoperations.com. I'm happy to send you a copy of the deck for you to review it again at a later time, or present to internally if you're interested in looking into adding KnowBe4 as a solution for your credit union.
Yep, definitely, yeah. And like Brandon said, yeah, you can email him at bfriedman@ongoingoperations.com, or if you just need something shorter to remember, CISSO@ongoingoperations.com, and we can get that information over to him. Or if you have any, technical questions on the solution, we're here to help you guys. I'm just giving him a shorter name to remember, Brandon. All right, so it looks like we don't have any other questions coming in. We'll give about another 30 seconds to see. But at this point, I just want to thank everybody for joining us. We're really excited about this partnership that we've done with KnowBe4 and the and the program that we've done around managing this. And if you are already a KnowBe4 customer, we can still work with you to manage that KnowBe4 platform and execute your phishing tests and your training, periodically throughout the year. So don't let the fact that you may already be a customer scare you away. We would love to see how we can help you make your training and your KnowBe4 testing more effective.
All right, thank you, Shane and John, for the excellent presentation, and to all of our attendees who joined us today. We appreciate your attendance, and we look forward to seeing you on future Lattes and learning with ongoing operations. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you all.